All right, and we're back. So we're going to touch on Standard 11b, and we've looked at the big businesses. We've looked at how the expansion of the railroads has impacted businesses. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the guys who are in charge of those big businesses and how they got to where they are. Okay. All right. So after the Civil War, so all these businesses after the Civil War are really they're trying to earn a profit. But the problem is that the small businesses can't keep up. And again, these robber barons, these gentlemen with a business vision, they start to see, where the country's headed, where the economy is headed, and they start to buy up all these small businesses because those small businesses just can't compete with them. These large companies then become corporations, all right? And eventually they start to buy up all the small businesses, and then there's no one to compete with. And so these businesses, these corporations become monopolies or trusts. So as you can see, that is in pink, so it's one of your vocabulary terms. You need to be keeping up with these. So as you go through these videos, as we cover these terms, you need to put them on your sheet that you've been handed. What's in yellow is either your definition or their notes that you need to be keeping as well. So while you're watching the videos, please remember to take those notes. But these monopolies, a monopoly is when there's a business or a corporation who has nobody else to compete with. All the competition has been eliminated. And so then that business can set the prices for the goods and set the number of goods that will be sent out to distribution or that's out there for sale. That's why you see sometimes there are companies that they are the only company that provides a good or a service, so they can set the prices. Our government has since put in restrictions and securities to kind of help the consumer so that those monopolies don't take us for all we're worth, but they do exist still today. So individuals who created these businesses, like I said, I would give you a few extra names, but you need to focus on Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller. Carnegie is going to be Carnegie Steel. And we talked about how steel was impacted by the railroads. And then Rockefeller will start the Standard Oil Trust Company. And so that's what those two are very well known for. There's also Cornelius Vanderbilt, who was involved in railroads. And you should know him from the Vanderbilt House or the Biltmore House up in Asheville, North Carolina. If you ever get a chance, maybe Google it and kind of look at it. It's a huge estate, big home. But then there's J.P. Morgan, and you may have heard of him, Chase Bank or Chase Credit Cards. He started a banking and finance corporation, and a lot of these are still kind of in existence today. All right, so let's start with one of the first names on our list, and that's John D. Rockefeller, and that's him over on the right-hand side of your screen. He started out as a bookkeeper for a small grain company and then kind of worked his way up and built his own grain company. He was incredibly business savvy. He knew business. He understood the economy. He understood how things worked, and he could kind of see how things were going and what direction the country was headed. So, he was very good business sense, very good businessman, as far as knowing what to do and how to increase his wealth. He recognized that oil was something that was coming about, that was something that a lot of people used. And he could see that the refining business for oil, where you take it out of the ground and you kind of refine it and turn it into something that's usable by people, he recognized that what people were doing wasn't really working very well, wasn't very cost effective, and he figured he knew a way to do that. So he began his business, his Standard Oil Trust business, by transporting petroleum products or oil products. That's where his business began. That's what he started, the service that he started to offer. And then he recognized, hey, I'm buying my barrels. I'm using somebody else's railroad. There's some ways I can cut costs. So he cut costs by making his own barrels, creating a factory that would make his own barrels. And then he recognized, hey, you know what? The wood that's needed for these barrels, I can go and buy the forest instead of buying it from somebody else. Instead of buying the wood from somebody else, I can buy the forest or the land, and then I'll have my own wood. and I'll use that to make my barrels and wagons, and then I'll use that to transport the oil that I have. And then, hey, I'll buy my own horses. And so this process of, you have a company up here, but you buy all of the raw materials or the capital that goes into your final product, that's called vertical integration. Okay, you're buying up everything that goes into making that product. So for example, McDonald's might, they might sell burgers, but then they own the cattle, and then they own the butchery that processes the meat, and then they own the land that the cattle's on. They own everything that goes into making their product. That's vertical integration. Okay. Again, that's a term that you need, so you need to put that on your sheet, and there's a way to, you can pause this video and write that down and put the definition down and answer those questions on your sheet. And then Rockefeller said, you know what? I'm not the only refining business out there. Let me look at some of these other refining businesses that aren't being successful. Maybe I can buy them up too. And so what he started to do was he started to buy up the other refineries so that he became the only oil refinery out there. That's called when you buy up all the competition that's on a level playing field with you. So like if I own a McDonald's, then I buy up all the fast food chains that sell the same products. That's called horizontal integration, right? Everything that's there with you selling the same product. And then he started to realize, I'm shipping my oil by wagon. Well, then I'm going to move to the railroads, and I'm going to ship it by railroad. And then he realized, that's not very efficient either or cost effective. If I made pipelines, I'm not having to pay somebody else. I'll make my own pipelines, and I'll just push it through. I don't really need somebody operating a railroad. I just push it through the pipeline. So Rockefeller had really good business sense. Okay, and here is here's a political cartoon that I wanted you to see about the Standard Oil Trust, and he's kind of like the octopus, and he's like, what's next? I've bought up, this oil refinery business. I've bought up the ships that will ship it. I've bought up, the land where I'm drilling for the oil. What else can I buy up next? Okay, so that's a really good picture, visual for you to see how that vertical integration works. Okay. All right. So now there's Andrew Carnegie, and let me kind of show you of him. Okay. There's Andrew Carnegie up here, white beard, kind of stands out a little bit from Rockefeller. Okay. So Carnegie was an immigrant from Scotland. His family came over. They're very poor. They worked really hard for everything that they had. He began working at 13 years old in the mills. He saved his wealth. He was really good at saving his money. And he'd invest it, and he had really good business sense too, so he knew where to invest it to kind of turn his money over. And because he was such a good worker, he saw a lot of promotions, so he kind of worked his way up in the companies. He found a process or discovered a process to forge better steel more efficiently. It was called the Bessemer process. When you find a way to process your steel and create it in a more efficient way, you're saving money. And you can do it faster so you can produce more steel. So you're saving even more money. He also used vertical integration to increase the production of steel. And he's kind of the first billionaire in history, in U.S. history. What stands him out above the rest, though, is that Carnegie was quite the philanthropist, and philanthropist is a good academic term for you to know. A philanthropist is basically somebody who gives money to charities. Now, a lot of these robber barons, they did give money to charity, but Carnegie stands out because he gave more than anybody, than any of the other wealthy business owners. He saw education to the masses as a way to produce better, more intelligent workers to kind of earn him more money. So he gave a lot of money to education, a lot of money to build more libraries, and a lot of money to create higher education colleges and things. All right, so what makes these wealthy men so wealthy? Well, one, they're shrewd business business owners. I mean, they cut deals. They're not worried about the small-time person. They're not worried about hurting people's feelings or those relationships, except to make themselves more money. They find great ways, very effective ways to cut costs in their production to save themselves more money. They buy up all the other businesses around them, so there is no competition. So they create those monopolies, and they're willing to accumulate their wealth at the expense of others. Like, they are not. They don't make friends. They make business partners and network with people so they can earn more money. That's it. How do you think this impacted society? How do you think it impacted the economy? I'm going to ask you that question, and I need you to post some answers. Okay.